The name Theodore Gericault, legend among French artists, and one of the most important pioneers of the Romantic art movement of the 19th century. But within his legacy is a body of work that is at once terrifying and immortal. He lived like a fever and died like a ghost, carried away before his 33rd year. Yet in that short life, he gave us visions, not only of triumph and beauty, but also of decay, ruin, madness, and death. He was not content to paint the world only with the images that please us, but delved deeply into the dark side of our reality. He sought the company of corpses, the gazes of the insane, the mute testimony of the drowned and dismembered. These canvases are not simply pictures, but open graves through which the viewer peers into humanity's darkest recesses. Born in Rouen in 1791, Jean-Louis André Theodore Géricault came into the world during the turbulence of revolutionary France. While many young men of his generation dreamed of glory on Napoleonic battlefields, Géricault's fascination lay elsewhere. From his earliest studies, he showed a preference for vigor and violence, for scenes that writhed with tension. Horses especially captivated him, those creatures of power, speed, and fury. He sketched them tirelessly, painted them in battle, in races, in storms, as though their straining muscles mirrored the restless energy within himself. But beneath the surface of his admiration for living force lay an unquiet attraction to its opposite. For Géricault, death was not the end of vitality, but its twin, its darker double. He did not turn away from suffering, nor did he veil it in allegory. Instead, he pursued it directly. Walking the morgues of Paris with his sketchbook, studying the color of rotting flesh, the slackness of mouths that would never again cry out. Where others averted their eyes, he gazed. Where others prayed, he painted. Nowhere is this obsession clearer than in the Raft of the Medusa, his colossal masterpiece that stunned Paris. The painting recounts a recent scandal, the wreck of the French frigate Medusa off the coast of Africa in 1816. The incompetent captain had abandoned more than 150 souls on a makeshift raft. After weeks adrift, only 15 out of 150 survived, resorting to cannibalism in their desperation. To depict this horror, Géricault did not rely on imagination alone. He studied firsthand the bodies of the drowned and decomposed. He retrieved severed limbs from hospitals, borrowed cadaver heads from medical schools, and set them upon his studio floor. Visitors reported the stench of death clinging to his canvases. He was, in truth, painting among the dead. His studio filled with grisly studies now known as the heads of torture victims. These are not portraits in any conventional sense, but close, unflinching examinations of dismembered heads, bloated, bruised, hair matted with blood, eyes half open in death's mockery of life. In these works, death becomes intimate. The Raft had shown us collective catastrophe. The heads confront us with singular annihilation. There is no narrative, no allegory, no moral lesson. There is only flesh undone. The painter's brush caresses each detail, the purple bruise, the slackened jaw, the strange serenity that sometimes steals over a corpse. To look upon them is to feel unease, for the artist's gaze is not one of revulsion, but of reverence. He paints these heads as though they were saints, relics of a holy suffering. Their silence is louder than any scream. They stare through the canvas, accusing not just their killers but the viewer who dares to look upon their mutilation. In them, Gericault reveals a truth that polite society sought to hide, that death is not distant, but immediate, intimate. Perhaps the most haunting of Gericault's studies is the head of a drowned man. Here, all ornament falls away. We are left with a single, waterlogged face, suspended in shadow. The flesh is pallid, lips darkened, hair tangled with the sea. Yet the impression is not one of peace. It is the peace of the abyss, the peace of annihilation. The portrait is at once anonymous and universal. It is no individual, yet it could be anyone. A man swallowed by the sea, forgotten by all but the artist who preserved him in paint. In this single drowned head, Gericault distills the very essence of mortality, that all life ends in silence, that all identity dissolves into the faceless tide of death. In 1818, Gericault completed the Raft of the Medusa. The resulting canvas, over 20 feet wide, is a vision of humanity stripped bare. The raft tilts diagonally, its survivors caught between despair and one last flicker of hope as they sight a distant ship. Corpses litter the foreground, grey, swollen, naked. A father cradles his son's lifeless body, his face a mask of despair. Others collapse into heaps of limbs, indistinguishable from the wreckage of wood. Above them, a knot of men raise a tattered cloth in frantic signal, their gestures at once triumphant and futile. The painting breathes dread. It is not merely a history painting, it is a tomb. The viewer is made to stand among the drowned, to smell the rot, to feel the sea's cruel indifference. Though the survivors gesture toward salvation, the eye lingers on the body's heavy pale, forever claimed by the abyss. In this way, the Raft of the Medusa is not about survival at all. It is about death's dominion. Yet Gericault did not confine his dark art to the dead. He also sought the living who dwelt on the border of death, the insane. Around 1822, as his own health faltered, he embarked on a series of portraits now called the Monomaniacs. These 10 paintings, of which only 5 survive, depict patients in asylums, each consumed by a single obsessive thought: maniacal envy, suicidal depression, kleptomania, criminal insanity. Unlike earlier depictions of madness, Gericault painted these figures with solemn dignity. Their eyes are clouded, their mouths twisted by fixations beyond reason, yet they are not caricatures. They are human beings trapped in the cages of their minds, as powerless as corpses upon a raft. Their suffering is inward, yet Gericault renders it with the same weight and gravity as death itself. The Monomaniacs are perhaps his most unsettling works, for they show that one need not die to be lost. Madness is itself a kind of living death, a loss of self, of reason, of the very faculties that distinguish the living from the inert. In painting them, Gericault seemed to confess his own closeness to their state. Friends remarked upon his melancholy, his obsessions, his restless and haunted demeanor. One senses that in portraying the mad, he was painting an unspoken self-portrait. By 1823, Gericault was himself a ruin. Years of reckless horsemanship had left him broken by repeated falls. Tuberculosis gnawed at his lungs, his once strong frame wasted away to bone and shadow. He lingered in agony, a living skeleton, visited by friends who sketched and painted him in his decline. Ari Scheffer's portrait shows him seated, draped in black, eyes hollow, skin pallid as if already embalmed. Others painted him gaunt, spectral, and resigned, living death masks that captured his slow vanishing. He died on January 26, 1824, at the age of 32. His funeral was grand, yet beneath the pageantry lay the grim truth. The artist who had painted the dead had joined them. In life, he had courted their silence, sought their likeness, immortalized their decay. In death, he became one of them, his face another study for the grave. To walk through a gallery of Gericault's works is to walk a corridor lined with shadows. The raft of the Medusa looms like a black sea, its bodies forever tossed upon waves that never calm. The heads of torture victims glare from their dismembered stillness. The head of a drowned man sinks perpetually before our eyes. The monomaniacs mutter in their silence, their obsessions clinging to them like ghosts. His art is not for comfort. It is a confrontation with mortality, with the frailty of flesh and the terror of oblivion. In a world that preferred to hide such truths, Gericault dragged them into light, painting them with the same reverence that others reserved for saints and kings. He forced us to look upon the dead and the damned, to see in them not strangers but ourselves. And so he remains Gericault, the man who painted the dead. His canvases whisper still, reminding us that death is never far, that madness crouches in the mind's shadows, that the sea waits for us all. He painted not simply what he saw, but what he knew, that every life, however bright, ends in silence, and that the painter's task is to give that silence a face.